Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to another episode of Ryan's Ghost. I am your host, Salbo the Stat Guy. My first two videos I talked about Nolan Ryan, but I wanted to switch gears today and talk a little bit about the lineup and about utilizing your lineup, and also RBIs, which kind of fell into disrepute the last couple of years. You know, people don't think it's as important anymore as it used to be, and everybody wants to talk about analytics and all the new stats like isolated power, and you can't look at it on base percentage and slugging percentage. You have to combine them together. What's his WAR, his wins above replacement, what's his runs created. So I think that's just kind of numbers people use when they go to arbitration because they want to try to get more money out of their team. But some of the traditional stats have kind of fallen by the wayside, and I still think they're still valid to this day. And I still do like RBIs, even though most, I guess, of the experts don't really tell you that it's a really good indicator of how well a guy is producing. Obviously, if you're going to drive in a lot of runs, you have to be a good hitter. You have to put the bat on the ball. But also, you have to have guys on base when you get up. If there's nobody on base to drive in, chances are you're not going to have a whole lot of RBIs unless you hit a home run every time up, which obviously, in this day and age is, I guess, feasible a little bit, but most of the time it's not really realistic. And so the way managers used to conduct or construct their lineup was your leadoff hitter obviously was your best hitter at getting on base. Most of the time it was somebody who could make good contact, somebody who could walk, maybe get hit by a pitch. And it also helped that they had some speed, or if they could put a bunt down, maybe a drag bunt to get a base hit. So when I think of leadoff hitters, I think of people like Ricky Henderson, who could walk a lot. He had good speed. I think of guys like Brett Butler, who could get on base. He had good speed as well. He could bunt his way on. He could, slap a ball around the infield and stuff. Guys, he didn't strike out a whole lot. Your second place hitter was usually your best bat control hitter, meaning he didn't strike out a lot. He could draw walks. He could hit and run. He could hit behind runners. Growing up a Yankee fan, I always thought Willie Randolph was a prototypical second place hitter. Think of guys like Derek Jeter, So that was kind of like your two hitter right there. Your third hitter or third in the lineup is basically just your overall best hitter. Usually a guy who could hit for average, who could hit for power. When I think of third place hitters, I think of people like Don Mattingly. I think of guys like George Brett. Guys who, like I said, could hit for average and could hit for power as well. I think Aaron Judge right now is a great hitter in the 3-hole. Your fourth place hitter, cleanup as they say, was usually your best power hitter. A guy could hit a lot of home runs for you. And your fifth place hitter was usually your second best power hitter. And then you just kind of, had the rest of your lineup, filling it out. I know for a while in the late 90s, Tony La Russa got the bright idea to hit the pitcher eighth in the lineup to try to shake things up a little bit. Because as we know, watching games in the National League for the longest time, if you had a rally going, you'd always end up walking the eighth place hitter just to get to the pitcher because it was basically an automatic out. So I guess La Russa figured maybe if he hit the pitcher eighth, he could kind of, break that up a little bit. Didn't work out too well for him, and he didn't really use it a whole lot after 1998. But my logic is, and it's, I guess, the traditional point of view, is that I want to have my best power hitters hit 3, 4th, or 5th. I don't want them to hit first. I don't want them to hit second, because I want them to have guys on base, obviously, when they get up. And I'm also a big believer in constructing a lineup to try to help protect some of your hitters as well. If we go back to 1961, Roger Maris set the American League record. He hit 61 home runs. He broke Babe Ruth's record. And throughout the whole season, Maris basically hit third, and he didn't receive one intentional walk the entire year. So even though he was basically setting the American League record for home runs, pitchers were still pitching to him. And why do you ask? Well, because hitting behind Maris was Mickey Mantle, and pitchers didn't want any part of Mickey Mantle. They'd rather face Maris and have him risk hitting a home run against them than face Mickey Mantle. So, that was probably the best example of having protection in the lineup. Maris was going to get good pitches to hit because if you walked Maris, you had to face Mantle with a guy on base. And as a side note, I'll get into a little bit later, but Kyle Schwarber, had a career year this year in home runs and RBIs in 2025, and he hit in front of Bryce Harper. Now Bryce Harper obviously isn't the player he once was, but he still puts up pretty good numbers. But I think pitchers would still rather have faced Kyle Schwarber than face Bryce Harper. So I'm a big believer, like I said, in having guys protect each other in a lineup as well. So with that in mind, I just want to take a quick trip down memory lane real quick just to talk a little bit about RBIs. If we go way back to the 1930s, offenses were just insane. It was kind of like the Wild West. In the National League in 1930 alone, the Philadelphia Phillies hit 315 as a team. Okay, the entire league, National League, hit 303. I mean, nowadays, the whole league hits 240 or 250 if you're lucky. These guys were hitting over 300. The Phillies scored 944 runs in 1930, but they only won 52 games. Okay, they averaged 6 runs a game, but they basically gave up almost 7 runs a game because the ERA as a team was 6.71. And if you look at the highest ERAs since 1900, 5 of the 10 top highest ERAs came from the 1930s. So, I mean, it was just really bad for pitchers in the 30s. I mean, they just kind of got batted around, and there was basically nothing they could do. But if we go back and we look at the top 10 seasons where players had the most RBIs, you had 8 of them in the 1930s. Okay, it was, like I said, it was just crazy. And the major league record is Hack Wilson. He was an outfielder for the Chicago Cubs. In 1930, he drove in 191 RBIs. And so when he got up to bat, 60% of the time he had guys on base for him. And he actually hit 362 with runners in scoring position. So we just had a monster year. But the thing about Hack Wilson is that the entire season he hit 4th in the lineup. Didn't hit 1st, didn't hit 2nd, didn't hit 3rd. Every single at bat in that lineup for that year he hit 4th. So I think it definitely helped him because he always had guys on base when he got up. Second is Lou Gehrig. Okay, he has the American League record for RBIs in a season. He had 185 back in 1931, and he got up the plate 56% of the time. He had guys on base, and he had 332 runners in scoring position. And every single at bat, every single game, he had 4th in the lineup. Third all time is Hank Greenberg. He was the first baseman for the Detroit Tigers. In 1937, he drove in 184 runs. 61% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 368 with runners in scoring position, but he hit 4th every single game. 4th all time is Jimmy Fox in 1938. He drove in 175 runs. Only 49% of the time did he get up with runners on base. He hit 3rd in the lineup 103 times. He hit 4th in the lineup 46 times, but he hit 409 with guys in scoring position. So I mean, he definitely made the most of it when he got up. The 5th spot goes to Lou Gehrig in 1927, 173 RBIs. He hit 4th the entire year in the lineup. He got up 55% of the time with guys on base, and he hit 402 with runners in scoring position. Next is Lou Gehrig again, back in 1930. He had 173 RBIs, just like he did in 1927. He hit 3rd in the lineup for 5 games, 4th for 64 games, and he actually hit 5th for 85 games. And 55% of his at-bats, he got up with guys on base, and he hit 351 with runners in scoring position. Next is a guy named Chuck Klein, who was a right fielder, I believe, for the Philadelphia Phillies. And in 1930, he drove in 170 runs. He hit 3rd in the lineup 60 games. He hit 4th 96 games. 52% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 411 with runners in scoring position. I mean, just insane. 1932, Jimmy Fox had 169 RBIs. He hit 5th the entire season. 52% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 366 with runners in scoring position. 1935, Hank Greenberg again. This time he had 168 RBIs. He hit 4th in the lineup, 145 games. He hit 5th for 2 games, and he hit 6th in 5 games. 56% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 311 with runners in scoring position. And to round out the top 10, Babe Ruth back in 1921. He had 168 RBIs. He hit 3rd in the batting order the entire season. 55% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 338 with runners in scoring position. Now, those are some incredible numbers, but like I said, most of those guys hit 4th or 5th in a lineup. Some of them hit 3rd, but none of them hit 1st, none of them hit 2nd, because managers knew we wanted these power hitters up, guys who could hit home runs with guys on base. You know, they didn't want to hit them 1st or 2nd just to get them more at-bats, because they wanted quality over quantity. And for Lou Gehrig to be up there 3 times is pretty amazing, because he hit 4th in the lineup most of the time, and Babe Ruth hit above him. So, I mean, he always either had a guy on base or Ruth would hit a home run and clear the bases, but the guy still just, put up insane RBI numbers. So, just pretty incredible when you think about it. Now, if we look at guys who are more recent in the major leagues, if we go back the last maybe 20, 30 years and look at guys who had the most RBIs in a season, back in 1999, Manny Ramirez drove in 165 runs when he was with the Cleveland Indians. He hit 4th in the lineup for 146 of those games. He hit 5th one time. So he didn't hit 1st, didn't hit 2nd, didn't even hit 3rd. And 55% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 383 with runners in scoring position. Next is Sammy Sosa in 2001. He drove in 160 RBIs. He hit 3rd 141 games. He hit 4th 19 games. 51% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 324 with runners in scoring position. Next is Sammy Sosa again. In 1998, he drove in 158 runs. He hit third, 121 games. He hit fourth for 38 games. 51% of the time, he got up with guys who were on base. And he had 315 with runners in scoring position. Next is Juan Gonzalez in 1998. He drove in 157 runs. He hit fourth for 153 of those games, and he hit fifth in the lineup once. 56% of the time he got up with guys on base, and he hit 315 with runners in scoring position. And to round out the top five, Alex Rodriguez back in 2007. He drove in 156 runs. He hit fourth in the lineup for 156 games, and he hit fifth for 2 games. 55% of the time he got up on base, and he hit 333 with runners in scoring position. So as you can see, none of those guys hit first, none of those guys hit second. Sosa hit third a lot, but most of the guys hit fourth in the lineup. So we'll give them more of a chance to drive runs in. And all those players listed, they all hit over 300. So it wasn't like today where you had guys, barely getting 100 RBIs, hitting 220 or 230. And most of those guys, like I said, had 40 or 50 more home runs in the season. So they were able to drive in, a ton of runs because they had power. If you took a guy who maybe hits 220 in this day and age in the major league, so maybe somebody like Anthony Volpe, the shortstop for the New York Yankees. I mean, if you put him fourth in the lineup and had a ton of guys on base in front of him, since he's not that good a hitter, he's obviously not going to drive in 140 or 150 runs. Probably get lucky if he even has 75 RBIs. So you can't just throw anybody in the lineup, hit him fourth and be like, well, he's going to get a ton of chances to drive in RBIs, so eventually he's going to get a whole bunch of them. But it's like you still have to put the bat on the ball, you still have to put the ball in play, you still have to hit, and drive those runners in. So like I said, you want, I think, quality at-bats over quantity. So if we take a look at a couple of guys in particular where I think this totally applies to, and I've been kind of complaining about it for the last couple of years being a Yankee fan, but I think the Yankees and Aaron Judge. Judge is a great player. He's obviously won the MVP 3 out of the last 4 years, and he's basically doing it all, I think, despite the fact that he's being put in a lineup incorrectly. And so if we go back to 2022, Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs that year. He broke Roger Maris's American League record. He had 131 RBIs, but he hit first in the lineup 34 games, and that was mostly the last month of the season because they wanted him to get more at-bats to break the record. But he hit second in the lineup 112 games, and he hit third only 7 games. But he got up for his at-bats, and 56% of the time he had nobody on base. So, I mean, obviously the Yankees that year, DJ LeMahieu was kind of the leadoff hitter for a while, and then they had Aaron Hicks and a couple other guys. So, I mean, it wasn't like he had all these guys, getting on base ahead of him. So, I mean, most of his RBIs, I hate to say it, but they came through the home run. And he probably could have had even more RBIs if he actually had guys on base, because out of his 62 home runs, 41 of them were solo shots. So, like I said, hitting him second really didn't help him. I mean, it's incredible he had 131 RBIs, but he probably could have had more if he actually had guys on base and he hit lower in the lineup. So if we go to 2023, Judge hit 37 home runs that year. He only played about 104 games. He had some injuries. But he had 37 homers, 75 RBIs. He hit second in the lineup for 102 games, and he only hit third for 2 games. But once again, he got up to bat 60% of the time with nobody on base. And out of his 37 home runs, 23 were solo shots, so 62% of his home runs were with nobody on base. So once again, he's getting up and he's got nobody to drive home. 2024, the Yankees seem to wise up a little bit. That year, Judge hit 58 home runs. He had 144 RBIs, which was a career high. And what do you know? He hit third in the lineup the entire season. So just by moving him down in the lineup one spot to third, 144 RBIs, career high. Because this time, he got up to bat 50% of the time with nobody on base. So that means 50% of the time there were guys on base, which is up from 40% the year before and 44% from 2 years ago. So we had more of a chance to drive in runs, and he obviously was able to do it because he set a career high in RBIs. And only 28 of his home runs, so only 48% of his home runs that year, were solo shots. So he obviously was hitting more 2-run homers, 3-run homers. Now in 2025, the Yankees kind of took a step backwards. Judge obviously did not. He had 53 home runs, but he only had 114 RBIs, so down 30 from the year before, because the Yankees hit him second in the lineup 77 games and third in the lineup only 74. So once again, he got up to bat 55.8% of the time with nobody on base to drive in. And 34 of his 53 home runs, so 64% of his home runs now were solo shots again. So I really hope the Yankees kind of wise up. When they hit Judge lower in the lineup, he obviously has more of a chance to drive in runs, and that's kind of the name of the game. You you want Judge to be up with guys on base so he can drive them in. Now, if we look at Judge's teammate, Giancarlo Stanton, and we look at Stanton's big season of 2017, that was the year he had 59 home runs, he had 132 RBIs, we kind of see the same thing. He hit second for 110 of those games, he hit fourth in the lineup for 35 of them, and he hit fifth in the lineup for 7 games. Okay, but of his 59 home runs that year, 36 were solo shots, so 61% of his home runs, because he had no one to drive in. Now, if we look at Marcell Ozuna, he was a teammate of Stanton on the 2017 Marlins, and that year he had a good year. He had 37 home runs, he had 124 RBIs. He hit third in the lineup for 15 games. He hit fourth in the lineup for 113. He hit fifth in the lineup 13 games, and he hit sixth in the lineup for 14 games. And of his 37 home runs, only 20 of them were solo shots, only 54% compared to Stanton's 61% because he hit lower in the lineup. And even though he only had 8 less RBIs, he was able to drive more guys in because he had more of an opportunity, and he didn't have to use the long ball every time to do it. Stanton had 56% of his at-bats that year with the bases empty, and he still had 132 RBIs, which is incredible. I mean, he was driving the guys in despite having nobody on base. But Ozuna only had 50% of his at-bats with the bases empty, so a 6% difference. And Stanton's home runs that year accounted for 67% of his RBIs. So most of his, like I said, RBIs came from home runs. But Ozuna, he drove in 124 RBIs that year, but only 50% of them were from home runs. So the other 50% were, singles, doubles, triples. So he was obviously able to, almost drive in as many runs as Giancarlo Stanton, but he was able to do it, with not just a home run. So in my book, that made him just kind of a better all-around hitter because he didn't have to rely so much on the long ball to get RBIs. Now, if we look at the second example of this phenomenon, we're going to look at Kyle Schwarber. He came up, he was an outfielder for the Cubs, but he really didn't find his niche until he went to the Philadelphia Phillies, and that's when he kind of started to blossom into this power hitter. And so if we look at Kyle Schwarber the last couple of years, in 2022, he had 46 home runs, he had 94 RBIs. He hit leadoff, though, 123 games. He only hit sixth in the lineup for 17 games. But like I said, with all those home runs, you'd expect him to have some more RBIs, but in 65% of his at-bats, he got up and there was nobody on base because he was batting leadoff. And out of his 46 home runs, 31 of them were solo shots. So 67% of his home runs were solo shots. Now, 2023, he hit 47 home runs, up one from the year before. He had 104 RBIs, so 10 more RBIs. This time, he only hit leadoff 108 games. He hit second 19 games. He hit third 20 games, and he hit fifth 21 games. So this time, he got up, and only 60% of his at-bats were with the bases empty, down from 65%. So he got a chance to drive in more runs, and he obviously did. And 29 of his 47 home runs were solo shots, so down from 67% to 62%. Now, in 2024, Schwarber had 38 home runs. He had 104 RBIs, but he hit first in every single game. So 66.7% of his at-bats, he got up with nobody on base. So like I said, just a waste of his power because if he had guys on base, he obviously could have drove in more runs, but 26 of his 38 home runs were solo shots, so 68% of his home runs he just drove in himself. Now, it looks like the Phillies wised up in 2025 because Schwarber had a career year. He had 56 home runs. He had 132 RBIs. But this time, he only hit first in 11 games. He hit second in 99 games. He hit third in 15 games. And he hit fourth in 37 games. So now, he only got up with the bases empty in 53% of his at-bats instead of 66 the year before. And only 32 of his 56 home runs, so only 57% of them were solo shots. So, you move him down the lineup a little bit more, you get more production out of him, more RBIs. Now, the last example I wanted to use is Shohei Ohtani. Okay, obviously he spent a couple of years with the Angels, but then he signed that huge mega deal with the Dodgers in 2024. But if we look at his numbers, they're pretty similar to Judge and to Kyle Schwarber. And so in 2021, when he was still with the Angels, Ohtani had 46 home runs, but he only had 100 RBIs. He hit first in the lineup 23 games, he hit second 117 games, and he hit third in 6 games. Okay, but he got up to bat, and 57.7% of his at-bats, he had nobody on base. So he had nobody to drive in. And out of his 46 home runs, 29 of them were solo shots, so 63% of his home runs with nobody on base. Now, if we go to 2022, production was down a little bit. He only had 34 home runs now, 95 RBIs. He hit first in 32 games. He hit second in 40 games. He hit third in 79 games. But the Angels obviously weren't very good in 2022, and so 59.7% of his at-bats, he had nobody on base. And, Mike Trout started to get hurt a lot now, so Ohtani was basically by himself in the lineup. And half of his home runs, 50% of them, were solo shots. Then in 2023, he had a bounce-back year. He had 44 home runs, so up 10 from the year before, but he still had the same amount of RBIs, only 95. He had first in the lineup for 5 times. He had second in the lineup 71 times. He had third in the lineup 59 times. But his percentage went down a little bit, so with the bases empty, only 53% of his at-bats were with the bases empty, down from 59 the year before. And of his 44 home runs, 24 of them, so 55%, were solo shots. Now, in 2024, like I said, he signed that big deal with the Dodgers. They won the first of their 2 World Series in 2024 and 2025. But Ohtani kind of exploded, going to a notorious pitcher's park, too. In 2024 with the Dodgers, he had 54 home runs, and he had a career high with 130 RBIs. He had first in 90% of his games, and he hit second in 69 of his games. But he still had 58% of his at-bats with nobody on base. So, it was incredible that he had as many RBIs as he did when he was getting up 58% of the time with nobody on base. So a lot of his RBIs were coming from his solo home runs. And he hit 32 solo home runs that year, so 59% of them were solo shots. Then in 2025, he actually did a little bit better. He hit 55 home runs that year, so up 1 the year before. But his RBIs went from 130 down to 102 because he hit leadoff again 148 games, and he hit second only 10 games. So Ohtani got up to bat, and 64% of his at-bats, he had nobody on base, which to me, like I said, is just ridiculous. Talk about not using the guy's power. You want to have as many runners as you can when he gets up, and hitting him leadoff just isn't going to do that. And of his 55 home runs, 39 of them, so 71% of his home runs, came with nobody on base. So like I said, analytics is great and everything, and people want to invent new numbers and invent new stats, and you should use this, you should use that. But I think some of the traditional stats still pretty much give you an idea of how good a player is. And I still like to look at the guy's RBIs, but I obviously like to look at the chances he had as well. The more guys on base, hopefully the more RBIs he has. But like I said, you still have to hit the ball and put the bat on the ball and put the ball in play to drive in those runners. If I strike out all the time with guys on base, it's not going to help. But I think if the Dodgers move down Ohtani in the lineup, he'll get more RBIs, they'll get more production out of him, even though they're getting incredible production as it is. But like I said, he's doing it despite the fact he's hitting leadoff all the time. So I'm really hoping this year the Yankees leave Judge in the 3rd or the 4th spot in the lineup, give him a little more chance to drive in runs. I think the Phillies learned their lesson with Schwarber. They'll probably keep him, hopefully, hitting 3rd, where he kind of exploded this year. Or maybe even if you hit him 2nd, he still has more production than he does hitting leadoff. So let me know what you guys think. Am I kind of way off base here? Is analytics all the rage and I'm just kind of, don't know what I'm talking about? But leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know where you think your team should hit their best hitter. If you think they should hit him leadoff or 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th, or where should Ohtani hit in the lineup? Where should they put Aaron Judge? But give me a little bit of feedback. Let me know what you think. And let me know how you feel about analytics. If you like all the new kind of numbers that they're kind of putting out there like WAR, or if you like me and you like more of the kind of traditional numbers. So until next time, everybody, I'm Salbo the Stat Guy. Take it easy.